Rabi Ahmed. I'll be the moderator and the host for today. I am a writer, singer-songwriter, and have worked on previously on several trans projects at the City of Toronto. So I will be moderating most of the events for the rest of today and introducing all of the speakers.
We ask that you come be with us as we discuss all our different issues in this symposium on the breakdown of Stonewall, originated in the USA, that started this whole movement of
that are left untouched for refugees, for newcomers to really fail completely. That's why Rarica is in place. We organized our first event of A Long Road to Peace, where we interviewed half a dozen of refugees. 90% of them were transgender refugees, and creating that awareness of LGBTQ refugees in Canada. And I can proudly say we have seen an impactful change in the community since 2017. The community knows about 2S LGBTQ refugees. The community knows about the needs we need. And I see all organizations working tirelessly to make sure that refugees have the needs they have. Refugees have the resources they have. And I really, really give thanks to each and every organization that is doing this work, that jumped on this work to provide and make space, welcome LGBTQ plus refugees and newcomers in Canada. Our work at Rarica does contribute to those often neglected and ignored by the mainstream services, providing culturally relevant supports and services, supporting and advocating.
For us, what is a traditional role as in-between folks to take the work of what AltView Foundation and our other leaders in and around Edmonton have done to really look at what Raricanow and Shades of Color and your supporters and E2S and all of us were saying back when the Pride Parade was stopped here in Edmonton, to say, hey, and so on and so forth. We're doing what we can to hold space. We see folks on the call, like some of our city councillors, or candidates like Glynis and Stephen Townsend here on the call right now. And what we do is we hold space. We hold space, we ask those questions, and it can be tough questions. And it's not just, you know, the run of the mill, okay, just going with the flow in terms of, you know, being kind during political discussions, but actually just digging in there and asking things that are important, and holding others to account. And we thank Raricanow and all the others who stepped in during Pride that year, and now a lot of conversation and dialogue and a lot of grassroots initiatives are underway.
Things change, the more things stay the same. We hear of the African Canadian community, Somalian, Ethiopian, Eritrean, and others being submitted to street checks. So again, being stopped for no reason. And I have to say that I've never felt more unsafe in this city. As a cisgendered Black woman, my voice is pretty much ignored. And it's a feeling that peaked in 2019 during the Pride Parade. I was in the middle of the street talking to marchers to find out what was happening when I heard that Black protesters came to demand space and acknowledgement instead of being relegated to near invisibility and a side thought. So once the parade started up, I was caught up in the movement of the marchers, and I couldn't get off the road to safety of the street with the other spectators. And I felt conspicuous. I felt misplaced, displaced, and I panicked. And I just anticipated the heavy hand of a police officer on my shoulder and a voice saying, "Hey, you," or even worse, "Hey, sir." I dreaded yet another incident of being misgendered by a police officer. Let us be conspicuous. Let us be visible. Let us be placed. Let us take space, because it will not be freely given. Thank you for listening to my stories.
Those are amazing. They do tend to have a voice in everything that goes on here. And so one of the things we strive is for them to have space to tell that story. But we see it, and Don, you said some stories that we see every day around here when it comes to violence, when it comes to racism. Even outside our front door, the kids could be sitting out there, and someone drove by the other day and was like, "Fags!" And of course, the kids rallied right away and were, all over that. But that still exists, even though we've come a long ways. And you're right, we don't feel protected. We quite often, our protection is in the family here in the center, where we are protected within our walls. But what happens when we go outside those walls? And exactly, we should not be getting violence from the people that should be protecting us. That community, and we need to be together as a family to do that. And that's one of our strongest things, is we've created that sense of family and belonging. No matter who you are, or what you look like, or where you come from, within this space, you have that community and family. And that's, I think, what gives us strength beyond the violence and beyond the hate, for sure.
LGBTQ refugees and asylum seekers face a very unique set of challenges when they arrive in Canada. For example, when they look for a job, they are not sure about questions that they can be asked or they cannot be asked. Or if what they should ask their companies, or when their companies ask them about their sexuality, what should they say or not say. How to navigate the workplace is a lot more challenging, especially when you're coming from a different country where the norms are very, very different. To try and address these questions, TENT and the Human Rights Campaign, we started an LGBTQ refugee mentorship program in December last year, where we asked our member companies to each commit to mentoring at least 50 LGBTQ, someone's coming in, to each commit to mentoring at least 50 LGBTQ refugees per company over a period of 3 years.
Specifically, what I want to address today is that policing impacts all marginalized communities. Differently, sure, but it definitely impacts all marginalized communities, from refugees to immigrants to Black and Indigenous to people of color. We see that there is no real regard for our lives, no real regard for our safety. They have a commitment to protecting property and continuing the project that was started by the RCMP on Indigenous people's land and bodies. And so we come in this conversation as with our bodies as sites of violence, unfortunately. And it is within this moment of Pride celebration, Indigenous Awareness Month, that we acknowledge the efforts and the massive amounts of progress by the LGBTIQ communities, Two-Spirit, Indigenous elders, and those who are currently with us now. I think a lot of people talk about Native people as if we only exist in the past, but we are definitely here right now, living and breathing and fighting and resisting as well. So, about policing on Black bodies, that's also trans bodies, that's also queer and non-binary bodies. And so when in 2016, when Black Lives Matter Toronto stopped the Pride Parade, because they wanted to use us. They wanted to use us as we are woke, we are aware, we are doing the work. And we said, actually, you're not. But here's what you can do. Here's what you should be doing. Here's what our communities have been saying to you for 15 years that you have ignored. We released 9 demands. And the 9th demand, which was the last demand on that list, was for the police officers to show up in non-uniforms. They decided for themselves that they would not participate in Pride because of our ask, and sort of threw it back on us as organizers who were really asking for safety, who were really asking for less harm to our sex workers communities. Those Black trans women, those vivacious, wonderful sex workers are the people who started Pride in the first place. And
get lost in it. And so I guess where I'm like getting with like all of this is just to like remember like the people who love and respect you and constantly surround yourself with those people. And yeah, I'm so grateful to have met so many beautiful Black trans people and Black queer people, Indigenous queer and trans people, Two-Spirited people who have led me on this journey of self-love and appreciation, because I don't think I would be as strong and as passionate in my identity and who I am without all of those people. So I just kind of wanted to share a little bit of that.
Misplaced or tend to displaced because of their homophobia. One, police, especially SARS officials, target feminine presenting men and non-binary people for looking feminine and perceived gay. They are tortured, they are detained, they are blackmailed, and they are even arrested. Some are killed for looking like that. They also attack masculine presenting women, and most times these women are raped by SARS officials. For regular Nigerians, they are attacked by SARS, they're harassed by SARS for merely looking all flashy. But for queer people, we're attacked by SARS for looking flashy, for looking gay, for looking feminine, for just being in our origin. Social media is a very, very powerful tool in organizing here in Nigeria, because the laws of Nigeria criminalizes organization, assembly of queer people. So it is very difficult to see queer people come together in physical spaces to organize, especially when they don't even know themselves as queer. So social media really helped me in getting a lot of people, mobilizing a lot of people. And this happened through posting of videos, through daily uploads of tweets, and just regular talking. So through this conversation, me and other people were able to mobilize queer people into going to protest. And since the police left the street after the government banned us, it's been a bit relieving for me and other queer people, because we don't get to see these officials on the road anymore. But then we got to realize that it wasn't just about the officials, about the regular.
Uganda. I came to this country because I was fleeing persecution back at home as an out queer person. But not only that, because of the work I was doing of defending and protecting and promoting the basic human rights of LGBTQ plus people in Uganda. I started off as a grassroots activist there, founding some of the organizations that, some of you might know, like being a member of the Foundation of Freedom and Rome Uganda, Sexual Minorities Uganda, for which I was the first director, the founding director. I moved on to at the grassroots, where people cannot, rise up for themselves, or are so scared to rise up, or are so numb to say something. I always just want to come in there and offer encouragement and support where I can. And so this is why you see me involved very much with LGBTQ plus refugees in Kenya. And, if you have been following the stories on the Victim Casa show and elsewhere, you will realize that in the last 14 months, we have lost 5 LGBTQ plus refugees. We lost a baby in September of 2020 from effects of tear gas by Kenyan police at the UNHCR offices in Kakuma, when LGBT refugees had gone there to seek for protection. We lost another one just recently in April, a human rights defender, a refugee himself, Crichton Atwera, more commonly known as Trinidad, after a fire attack at Block 13 in Kakuma refugee camp. We lost another one, again, very recently, probably about a month and a half ago, to neglect in the healthcare system there. And because of the challenges that LGBT people face in accessing the very scanty services in Kakuma camp. We lost another one in Nairobi from suicide because of the challenges that they face as refugees that, are not being taken care of. And just this week, we have lost another one, again in Nairobi. So bodies are falling. And when bodies fall, that's when you know that this is a crisis. But when I speak of that, for those who haven't been following, you might, one might think that probably this is where it is at, this is where it starts. But in fact, I come into work around LGBT refugees in 2014. As you remember, we had the anti-homosexuality bill, the Kill the Gays bill, signed in Uganda into law, into an act in 2014, early 2014. However, LGBTQ Ugandans had started fleeing the country to safer lands in search of protection and safety. So they had already started crossing over to Kenya. You must also remember that these laws, this bill, when it was still a bill, it was actually supported by US evangelicals. If you know about Scott Lively and group, they encouraged the further criminalization, because homosexuality was already criminalized in Uganda.
Monopoly to the presence of God. No one has that monopoly. Every single one of us in this conference today and all of our friends, we have a unique access to the presence of God. So don't let anyone bully you by saying that you're an abomination because God says so. I mean, God didn't say so. You know, as far as I can tell you, I know that for God, we are beautiful. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. Scripture tells us that God knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb, and we were consecrated prophet over nations. I'm sure that, you know, my siblings from the two-spirit community will understand, you know, the conception of the human race, the conception of individuals in our mother's womb is a beautiful thing.
Have forgotten that they are guests. When you are a guest in someone's home, you don't steal their food, you don't steal their clothes, you don't tear apart their house. You are a guest and you act accordingly as a guest should. And so that means asking consent from Indigenous, from Cree people from this area who have been here, the caretakers for over 10,000 years of this area, asking their consent. And if they say no, to respect that no, because right now our no is not being respected whatsoever.